Så, då är vi på. Vad roligt. Nu är vi online. Igår kväll så var jag inte riktigt medveten om när vi gick live. Så att jag stod här och pratade med Stefan nedanför läktaren. Så jag fick många kommentarer att jag visar baken i livesändning, men jag var inte medveten om det. Kul! Vi kommer snart ha Arianna Walker som kommer att undervisa om sunda ledare, och vi har Pernilla Eklund och Linda Andersson. Pernilla, kan inte du börja med att bara berätta lite om vem du är? Alltså, ditt namn har ju dykt upp i New Wine-flödet och sådär, men det är inte säkert alla vet vem du är. Så berätta lite om vem du är.
Yes, Pernilla Eklund, 45 år gammal nu och gift, 2 barn, katt, 2 hund. Och jag jobbar till vardags på Team med uppdrag, Bibelskola Livskraft, som lärare och som själavårdare. Och jag har också läst en masterexamen i psykoterapi på kristen grund, där fokus är att bjuda in Guds helande närvaro i såren och att hjälpa människor komma i kontakt med sina sår och sen att bjuda in Gud i det. Och jag jobbar ju också lite som terapeut där jag använder det verktyget. Men gillar också att utbilda andra i att kunna göra det här. Att lyssna, locka fram såren och sen bjuda in Guds närvaro och utforska helandet som uppstår där. Det är jag.
Wow. Men jag blir nyfiken bara på den här psykoterapimastern som du har. Sa du att den var gjord på kristen grund eller är det din tillämpning?
Jajamän, det är kristengrunden. Den har vuxit fram inom UMU och finns i Danmark. Nationell Psychotherapy School in Christian Culture. IPSIC heter den om någon är intresserad som lyssnar.
Ja, jätteintressant. Och sen undervisar du då på livskraft. Är det i själavård eller andra ämnen också som du undervisar?
Ja, framförallt i själavård men också i andra. Jag är kursförståndare för andra året om det som är en ledarutbildning där vi satsar på att utbilda sunda ledare. Så det är mycket reflektion kring sunt ledarskap på andra året. Men mycket fokus på att bli hel i själen för att vara en sund ledare.
Yes. Sen har du också någonting som heter Soul Tools.
Ja, precis. Det är mitt eget företag för att kunna föreläsa och för att kunna ge terapi på. Jag har skrivit en bok och vi har skapat en podd om psykisk ohälsa så här nu som släpps. Skam- och sårbarhetspodden. Wow. Jag passar på att göra lite reklam för det.
Wow.
Just för att få ut budskapet om att vi som kristna har matchboll när det gäller att läka själens sår, för vi kan bjuda in Guds närvaro och kan nå helt andra dimensioner av inre helande. Så därför har jag mitt eget företag Soul Tools.
Wow. Alltså en sak som vi saknar just när vi inte möts fysiskt på konferenser, det är just där liksom emellan när man möter människor så upptäcker man en ny resurs i nätverket. Men det här är ju också ett sätt liksom att introducera dig för fler och se alltså vilken fantastisk resurs och flera resurser som du har. Vad roligt att höra.
Tack.
Och jag kan bara säga att folk börjar droppa in på chatten. Det är lite grann att skapa en foyer det här. Så är det någon som har några frågor eller kommentarer så får ni skriva i chatten. Jag håller ett öga på YouTube också om det är någon som skriver. Linda, du är ju välkänd måste jag säga i New Wine-sammanhang. Du har ju varit med otroligt länge. Men jag tycker ändå vi tänker att det är nya som kommer till New Wine och kanske tittar på det. Vem är du och vad gör du? Berätta lite kort.
Ja, jag är gift med Ingmar Andersson och vi är pastorspar i Rörvik, frikyrka, sedan några år som ligger i Sävsjö kommun i Småland. Och i Småland har vi varit ganska många år. Innan var vi på en annan plats, ett annat län. Vi har bytt län nu i alla fall.
Stort.
Sen har vi tre barn. En kvar hemma. Isak, han är
kanske här.
Ja, jag tror han hjälper till. Han skrev igår kväll att det hade varit en fantastisk första kväll.
Ja,
och Guds närvaro var fantastisk, skrev han. Sen en dotter i Halmstad. Hon och hennes man satt också med igår, var så tacksam för starten på den här ledarkonferensen. Erik har vi kvar hemma, går sista året på gymnasiet och vi har en katt, Pernilla, ingen hund.
Katt verkar vara ett genomgående tema. Jag satt precis i ett jobbmöte på Zoom för jag har mitt företag, så jag stack in där på lunchen här och då var det också en katt som dök upp. Just det. När digitala möten är så mycket katter som dyker upp i bakgrunden. Det är ingen risk att det kommer katter i bakgrunden här nu, eller? För du är i kyrkan, Linda, ser jag.
Ja, nu är jag kyrkan.
Och jag
har stängt dörren.
Jag har stängt dörren.
Och jag är inte hemma, så jag har inte våran katt heller. Men alltså vi ska prata om sunda ledare, men jag tänker lite grann generellt nu, alltså både Pernilla och Linda, vad är er bild? Alltså, för vi pratar också om det corona, alltså att det är många som är hemma och det exponerar ju dysfunktionella familjer en hel del. Märker ni av också i de nätverk och de sammanhang som ni rör er att alltså, psykisk ohälsa är växande på grund av corona?
Börjar du, Pernilla?
Ja, jag rör ju mig mest på folkhögskola bland unga vuxna då, och där vi har ju förmånen att faktiskt få träffas dagtid och träffas live. Men jag hör ju från andra just att man möts av det här att man går hemma, man får inte pauser, återhämtning, utan man spelar ut sin inre stress i dysfunktionella beteenden för att man på något sätt, ja, men man tappar kontrollen lättare när man är mer pressad och man går på med varandra och man får mindre på något sätt. De här buffertzonerna är färre, och då klart att det är lätt att det spårar ur, och de här djupa destruktiva impulserna som finns i varje människa som vi alla bär på, lätt att det tar överhand, och att man hör ju siffror om mer misshandel, psykiskt våld. Hörde jag nu om BRIS att de har en 114% ökning sedan corona startade.
Oj, hjälp.
Psykisk misshandel då av barn, alltså föräldrar mot barn då.
Säg det igen, alltså vad sa du? BRIS har sett
en 114% ökning av fallen som handlar om psykisk misshandel då, av föräldrar mot barn. Alltså man kränker med ord, förnedrar med ord.
Ja.
Och det är väl mycket det att man inte har sina trygga zoner i kompisar, och ja, man får inte andrum, och då hamnar man i vägen för mamma och pappas frustration kanske.
Men jag tänker också att för en del så har kanske skolan varit en liksom skön flykt ifrån om det är ett dysfunktionellt hem. Men när man blir tvingad att sitta hemma så blir det liksom ett sånt tryck också. Och så är det kanske inte någon annan som får inblick i vad som händer. Och det är någonting att ta värt i bevakning. Vad tänker du, Linda? Vad är din erfarenhet utifrån ditt perspektiv?
Nej, men som alltid när det krisar så är det kan ju gå två håll. Jag hörde häromdagen om människor där det faktiskt är tvärtom, där de stärks i familjen. Men då är det ju sunt från början, men kanske väldigt stressat. Och finns det en grundtrygghet i botten, då kan ju den här perioden svetsas samman för att man får tid med familjen nu. Du skalar av. Och det hör man ju flera som säger, som är också mitt i livet, att man vågar nästan inte säga att den här tiden är faktiskt bra för dem. Men det måste man ju få lov att säga. Så det tänker jag tror vi pratade också, David, du gjorde något annat initiativ också, att nå ut så här, att den här online då.
Ja.
att jag menar, då pratade vi mycket i början att passa på att vila när mycket annat skalas av. För det väntar så mycket annat på andra sidan. Vi förbereder oss för någonting. Så att det är ju att både se, att inte blunda för det som Pernilla säger, och samtidigt också se det andra. Familjer som stärks, människor som mår bättre för att man inte får för mycket på schemat.
Ja. Ja, men jag kan känna igen det finns väl ingen familj som är 100% sund om vi liksom har någon skala. Vi har alla en viss mått av dysfunktion. Det är så med alla familjer. Ibland så har vi någon idealbild av att andra familjer är perfekta. Men hemma hos oss, jag kan faktiskt tycka att det var uppskattat att ha grabbarna hemma. Sen kan det vara lite svårt ibland, utmaningen när alla ska ha en arbetsplats och sitta och inte störa varandra när alla är uppkopplade. Men just det här att fått mycket tid tillsammans har jag också verkligen uppskattat. Och för mig har det verkligen corona under förra året varit att istället för att liksom låta det stressa mig, låta det vara en tid där jag får vila och hämta upp mig. Och det har jag behövt. Och nu har faktiskt accelererat igen med mitt företag, vilket jag är tacksam för. Men jag behövde den där viloperioden. Vi ska prata lite grann om, eller Arianna ska prata om sunda ledare. Vad ser ni, liksom, eller om ni ska ge något tips om man känner som ledare, liksom, jag känner att jag ibland är på bristningsgränsen, eller, liksom, eller hur kan jag upptäcka, vad är det för tecken på att jag behöver kanske agera just på de här områdena? Kan du ge några tips, några nycklar? Pernilla, har du någon tanke?
Ja, alltså när jag märker att jag behöver ta en paus, då börjar jag känna mig, alltså att jag blir lite folkilsken, att jag blir lite lätt irriterad när det börjar koka lite på insidan. Och jag vet att om jag inte tar mina regelbundna promenader, om jag inte har mina stilla stunder med Gud, då kommer jag att tappa den inre balansen. Sen tänker jag att det är så viktigt att ha koll på sina själsliga sår, att kunna leda sig själv först och främst innan man ska leda någon annan. Att man behöver lägga tid på det här, att faktiskt ta ansvar för de här impulserna som finns på insidan. Och är det någonting som behöver upp i ljuset och bearbetas lite mer, att men då är det jag som har ansvar för det. För att annars kommer jag spela ut det på dem jag leder, så att de blir drabbade i sin tur. Så att verkligen kunna ta ansvar för att vara en känslomässigt mogen och hel människa. Och att vara uppmärksam på det som händer på insidan.
Ja. Vi har någon minut, Linda, men nycklar till frihet har betytt mycket för mig. Jag har gått igenom materialet själv, jag gjorde det på egen hand och sen gick jag med en handlingskursen. Men kan du bara kortfattat på 30 sekunder berätta vad nycklar till frihet är och hur det kan vara resurs i församlingarna?
Ja, ett material, ett interaktivt lärjungaskapsmaterial som går att använda själv. En liten grupp, hemgrupp. Vi har haft över online nu förra terminen därför att situationen är som den är. Och man läser ett avsnitt och sätter av 20 minuter varje dag, 5 dagar i veckan. Och så träffas man 1 timme i veckan. Och sen får man liksom lägga det på den nivån man vill. Man tar upp det som så att det är lagom integritet, men det finns öppenhet att ta upp saker. Jag gjorde med en grupp här som nu i sin tur då kan också ge det vidare till andra, så att det blir en naturlig fortsättning och att verkligen liksom bli allt mer hel. Att ta sig tid. Och det har varit roligt att höra att också människor som varit både troende länge, men kanske inte, och en del som inte varit lika länge, det ger mycket oavsett vilken situation man är i. Den är levande berättelser, goda.
Linda, tack. Vi ska släppa över, för jag håller koll på klockan. Vi ska släppa över nu till att vi ska börja. Stort tack Pernilla och Linda.
Hej allihopa och välkomna tillbaka från lunchen. Särskilt välkommen till dig som kanske hänger på oss för första gången under den här konferensen. Judith heter jag och jag är med här i Citykyrkan. Jag hänger här mycket och är en av ledarna här. Och jag ska leda er genom de här kommande timmarna. Och min första informationspunkt är att vi kommer hålla på lite längre. Så vi kommer hålla på till 16:45 istället för 16:30. Så vet ni det. Och jag har också fått förmånen att introducera våra nästa talare. Och det är då ingen mindre än Arianna Walker. Och hon är ansvarig för Mercy UK. Hon är talare och författare. Och hon utrustar ledare och kyrkor och ger dem verktyg för att leva friare och mer helare liv. Och vi är väldigt tacksamma att hon har tagit sig tiden att tala till oss idag. Och varje gång hon har talat till oss här i Sverige så har hon verkligen uppmuntrat mig personligen i att ge så bra bilder för vad det innebär att leva ett helt och sunt ledarskap. Så kom med förväntan på vad hon vill ge oss idag. Och så tror jag att det kommer bli jättebra. Vi kommer att ha 3 undervisningspass nu, följt av processtid. Och i slutet av alla de här 3 tillfällena och processtiden så kommer det även en Q&A. Har du frågor till den så skicka det till info@newwine.se. Så jag behöver inte säga mer utan vi lyssnar på Arianna.
Hi everyone, it's Arianna Walker here from Mercy UK. I'm so excited to be able to share with you over the next few sessions some thoughts around emotionally healthy leadership. What does that look like? What are some of the things we need to watch out for, and what can we put in place to make sure that we are leading people into safe places, that we are leading well and by good example. And just to give you a little oversight of my own leadership journey, I've been in leadership probably around 20-25 years now. I started out as a teacher, I trained as a teacher. Then I ran my own business for about 5 years. Then I worked for our National Health Service here in the UK as a project manager. And finally, about 15 years ago, I started pioneering Mercy UK. It started out as just a very small ministry, very small charity. And over the last 15 years, it's grown into not just reaching the women in the home, but right across the country, and now also into Europe with our Keys to Freedom course, which is really exciting to see and being part of. I've written 4 books. I travel internationally and speak, although currently I am just speaking to my phone quite a lot. And I am also a wife and a mother, so I have had lots of opportunities over the last 20 years to learn some really painful lessons, to get it wrong lots of times, to find myself over my head, find myself stressed with the pressure and the expectation and the pace of leadership. And so I thought maybe over the next few sessions we can talk about some of the lessons I've learned, we can examine and discuss and explore some of the issues involved. I feel like there's a story I want to share that happened a few years ago that really explains a situation I found myself in within my leadership journey. And it was a few years ago when I was riding my friend's horse. I love horse riding, and God often speaks to me through my experiences and adventures as a horse rider. But I was riding a horse, and this particular horse was not mine, and I didn't realize actually that this was quite a difficult horse to ride. We were cantering along the hills in Yorkshire where I live, and the wind was in my face, and it was a beautiful day, and I was having such a great experience. And then the horse decided to go a little bit faster, and I thought, okay, that's fine, I'm still enjoying it, this is exciting, isn't it a brilliant adventure that we're on right now? And then the pace got faster again and again and again, and at some point I decided I was going to slow the horse down and realized the horse was not listening to me. And suddenly, I don't know when it happened, but the control had shifted from the pace being set by me as the rider, but by being set by the horse. And I tried everything I knew how to stop the horse, to slow it down, to get back into control. But no, this horse was going for it, and it was cantering and galloping out of control. Now, the worst part of it was that we were heading towards something called a cattle grid. Like I said, I live in Yorkshire, there's lots of farmland here. And one of the ways that we stop the sheep from crossing the road and from coming out of the fields is by putting something called a cattle grid, which is long metal bars that the sheep can't cross. Now, the thing is, horses can't cross them either. And if you are galloping towards a cattle grid and your horse gets its feet stuck in it, the horse will break its legs. So I began to really panic about the fact that I couldn't stop the horse, and this is where we were heading. It was disaster waiting to happen. And so I did the only thing I knew how. And I have to say to you, please don't ever, ever do what I'm about to tell you to do. If you're ever finding yourself riding a horse and it's out of control, don't do this. What I did was I decided it wasn't too big a horse, it was quite small, it wasn't too far off the ground, so and I was still on the grass verge at the side of the road, so I figured it could be quite a soft landing. So I decided I was going to take my feet out of the stirrups and throw myself off the horse whilst holding on to the reins, thinking that I could try and keep pace with the horse and so slow it down with my weight. Like I said, don't ever do this. What in fact happened was that I did come off the horse. I did 2 steps where then I tripped, fell on my belly and was dragged along by the horse for about 100 meters, and with the hooves pounding at the side of my head right here, being dragged along the floor. And finally, eventually, thank God, we slowed down and stopped because the horse basically was pulling me and all the earth with it. So we slowed down eventually and came to a standstill in a big heap. I'd hurt myself, it was traumatic. And I realized when I thought back on that experience, how often in my leadership journey I have felt like that. I have felt in life sometimes that the expectations and the demands and the pressures and the responsibilities have had a life of their own. They've had a speed of their own. They've demanded something from me that I realize I've not been able to give. I've tried everything I know how, and yet it's still going ahead. Yes, it's still going fast, and still people are asking for more, and still things are going wrong over here, and I can't stop it, and I don't know what to do. And I felt sometimes in my own leadership journey that I've wanted to do the same thing that I did on that house, which is basically just throw it all in, just collapse the whole thing down and throw myself off my leadership responsibilities and let it drag me along the floor and see if somehow with drastic measures I can make it all stop. And I remember a time when I really went to God on this. I was feeling so empty. I was feeling so much like the pace was going too fast. I wasn't dealing well emotionally. I wasn't dealing well with it in my mind. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't holding it together. I wasn't leading well. I was just holding on for dear life, trying not to throw myself off. And when I spoke to God about it, I really thought I was going to get from him a sense of, you know, support and encouragement and come on, you know, you've got this, don't worry, I will help you, which God does often give me. But on this occasion, what he said instead was Jeremiah 12 verse 5, and let me read it to you. It says this: so Jeremiah, so Arianna, so whatever your name is, if you're worn out in this foot race with men, what makes you think you can race against horses? And if you can't keep your wits during times of calm, what's going to happen when troubles break loose like the Jordan in flood? I'm reading that from the Message. And I felt God say to me, that you haven't even started yet. The leadership responsibilities I'm going to ask of you, the things I want you to build for me in my name, for my kingdom, haven't even begun yet, and you're already worn out. You're already struggling. You're already thinking about throwing it all in or sabotaging it all or just pretending that you've got it all together until you literally can't pretend anymore. How are you going to cope with all that I'm yet to do in you, all that I'm yet to give you, if you can't even deal with what's going on now? I realized then and there that I really needed to start putting some things in place on the inside of me that were going to give me the ability to respond to all the demands and the pressures of leadership from a much greater well of resource than what I currently had. So how do we get that? How do we get this greater ability to give from the inside of us, to lead people and to well and safely and with wholeness? How do we get that in our own lives so that we are able to model healthy leadership? Well, I had to first of all start with understanding that pressure is never going to go away. I had to stop trying to avoid the pressure, trying to reduce the demand, trying to say, find ways out of it, I have to accept and own the responsibilities I've said yes to. Accept and own that God has called me into leadership just like he has you. And realize that when God called me, he knew my weaknesses. He knew my failures. He knew that I don't have what it takes to meet the demand. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves as leaders is realizing and making peace with the fact that we don't have what it takes. We don't have enough. We don't have enough wisdom. We don't have enough energy. We don't have enough strategy. We don't have enough charisma or communication skills or abilities of our own to meet the demand that there is in place in our lives. So what do? Well, we understand what it says here. In 2 Corinthians 4, verse 7 to 9, in the New International Version, I'm reading this. It says, but this is Paul speaking, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. And there's the key. We need to understand that it's him in us that gives us our ability. Him in us that makes up what we don't have. The lack that we sense in ourselves that causes us stress, that causes us pressure. You see, pressure in and of itself is not wrong. Pressure doesn't cause stress. What causes stress and what causes us to fall apart emotionally and mentally isn't the pressure. It's our inability to deal with the pressure. It's the lack that we feel on the inside. It's we don't have enough time to do what we're supposed to do. We don't have enough ability. It's the lack that we become so aware of when we look at the demands of our leadership responsibilities that we then throw that back on ourselves and go, I just don't have what it takes. And then the stress comes with trying to not let people know that we don't have what it takes. Trying to hide the fact that we don't really know what we're doing, or that we're feeling the pressure of it, or that we're not sleeping at night. And so understanding actually that the very key is accepting our inadequacy. Accepting we can't do this without him. And knowing and realizing that actually God doesn't need anything from us, except for a willing and an obedient heart. A heart that says, okay, God, I hope you know what you're doing, because I'm just going to follow you. I'm just going to attach myself to you, Lord. I'm going to make it my business to start every day with, okay, Lord, just so you know, I don't have what it takes to do this, but I know you have. I know you have in me. And we get very, very good at understanding that it's him in us that is the answer. If we don't do that, if we make God one of the plates that we're spinning, our leadership, our family, our relationships, our whatever, and then one of the plates that we're all trying to spin is, and God, I need to talk to God because I have to prepare a message, or I have to talk to God because I need strategy, or I have to if God becomes one of the plates that we spin, then we are already seeing ourselves as a source of the resource to be able to meet all the demands. So God is not one of the plates that we spin. God is on the inside of us. He is the power that enables us to spin all the plates we need to spin. When we come under pressure from our external circumstances, whether it's financial or relational or church or any pressure that we might face in our lives as leaders, they start pressing down on us, and what happens is that what's on the inside of us comes out. And when what's on the inside of us isn't healthy, if the default lines in us is to start finding our own ways of putting coping mechanisms in, and they're different for every person. We all have them. We all have artificial ways in which we stabilize ourselves when we feel unstable. For some, it might be, a Netflix binge, I'm just going to escape from it all and pour myself into something. We might, put things off until the last minute and put them off and put them off. We might just really struggle with sleep, or we might find comfort in food, or we might have more destructive ways of dealing with our feelings of inadequacy and inability to deal with the pressures. More destructive things that we hide and that we're ashamed of, but make us feel like we've got some sort of control, that we are somehow coping with everything because we've put things in place that nobody knows about just to keep ourselves stable. Those are things that will come out. They will be shown, they will be seen by some around us sooner or later. And so we have a responsibility to be really clear about what's on the inside of us and work hard, put the work in, put the effort in to make the inside of us, our soul area, our body and our spirit, to be healthy and connected and founded on Christ. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. Some of the things that I think come out of people when pressure is on and they lose that connection with Jesus and they start giving out of their own strength is a sense of inadequacy. I can't do it, I don't have enough. Or perfectionism, I can't have a weakness, I can't have a failure, people are watching me, I have expectations and people need me to have it all together, so I will constantly pretend and gloss over any issue I might have and just literally keep going. There could be people pleasing, can't say no to people, don't want to let people down. So all these things start coming out of us, a sense of false responsibility. If I don't do it, it won't get done. It's my responsibility to X, Y, and Z, fill in the gap, whatever it is. And so we put a pressure on ourselves. And in the end, what it's all founded on is fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of getting it wrong, fear of disapproval, fear of letting people down. So the fear starts driving our internal world instead of the faith to trust that God knew what he was doing when he called you. He knew that you don't have what it takes. So stop pretending and make peace with the fact, like Paul says, I will boast in my weaknesses because I know that in my weaknesses, his strength is made perfect. We say it and we quote it and we preach messages on it, but making peace with our weaknesses and instead of trying to cover them over all the time is a very important step to becoming emotionally stable and healthy. Is to understand, I don't have it, but he does. And I will make it my business to, on a regular basis, access his grace, like the waves of the ocean that come towards us that are never ending. That is what his grace is like. His grace is everything we need. Every wisdom, every strategy, every emotional stability, every ability to make a decision, every effective leadership tool, everything, every provision, every level of energy, every sound sleep at night, it all comes from him, and it's called grace, and he makes it available to us. And all we have to do, literally all we have to do, is choose to access it. To set aside our pride, to set aside the I can't show weakness, I can't show anyone that I need help, to set aside the feeling of needing to have it all together and have all the answers, and instead go, you know what, I am on a journey. I'm on a learning journey just like all the people that I'm leading. I am figuring this out step by step, day by day, season by season, and that's okay because he is with me. He guides me, he walks beside me, and everything that I lack, he has enough of. And so we remind ourselves, I do this regularly, I still do this now after all these years. I picture myself on the beach, and when I feel like I don't have enough, when I'm hurting, when I'm disappointed, when I'm pressed on every side, instead of imploding, instead of trying to throw myself off and dragging myself along the floor, I remember, no, I need everything he has made available to me. I need his grace. And though it's available like the ocean, I only ever get it if I put myself in it. So many of us stand on the beach and we pray to God, give me grace, give me this, give me that, but we don't enter in. Take some steps into him. And by that I mean take time to spend with him that isn't about what you need. It's just being with him. Take time to worship, not because you're in a meeting or because you're leading the worship meeting or because there's an expectation for you to do that, but worship because you want to. You know, really moving past that demand and the demand for us to enter into a relationship and connection with him, and moving that from demand of, if I don't hold on, if I don't go to him for the message this week, if I don't figure out what, then it's all going to go wrong. Instead of moving from demand, we move to desire. I don't want to be far away from him. I don't want to do today without feeling him close to me. I know I can't, but more than I know I can't, I don't want to. I'm going to set my will to connect with the Father. Jesus did it all the time. It's how he led. He led from an overflow of God in him, an overflow of the Holy Spirit within him. The power that he had was not his own as a human. It came entirely from God in him. And the same is true for us. Where is your there? You're there where you go, where you connect, where you allow the presence of the Holy Spirit to feed you, to build you up. Where do you go with your hurt? Do you actually forgive, or do you preach about forgiveness? Do you actually renew your mind, or do you tell people how to do it? You know, we need to get to a place in our lives where we are humble enough to be able to say, even just to ourselves, okay, stop pretending and just acknowledge that actually I can't. And maybe sometimes we need to tell somebody that. Tell somebody that we're struggling. Tell somebody that, you know what, I know everybody thinks I'm all that, but I need you to know that actually, if it wasn't for the fact that I get on my knees on a daily basis, I couldn't do any of this. All of this is him. We need to ask for help when we're struggling. You know, I had a ski accident 2 years ago, and I completely ruptured my ACL, which is a tendon behind your knee. It went completely, and as I fell, I heard something pop, and everyone came around me and said, are you okay? Are you okay? Do you need help? What can we do? What can we do? And I went, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't worry. This is fine. I've got this. I don't need any help. I'm okay. Don't worry. I've been skiing for many years. This is all fine. I've got it under control. Me. My resources, my ability, my pain threshold, my skills. I will be okay. Thank you, but I'm fine. And as I got back up on my skis and I did another turn on the slope, the pain hit me so bad. I sat down and realized I am not okay. I can't do this. And then we had to get help, and I had to have the horrific, embarrassing experience of being, taken off the mountain on a stretcher backwards. So embarrassing. I hated every minute of it. But as I was laid on that stretcher, being taken off the mountain, I felt the Holy Spirit say to me, isn't it interesting how help didn't come until you said you weren't okay? And some of us need to be vocal. We need to say, actually, I'm not okay. And being emotionally healthy means that you are able to ask for help when you need it. You are not trying to keep it all together. Being emotionally healthy means that you recognize some of your own negative coping mechanisms. You recognize when you are in stress, when you are not doing well, and you are able to do something about those feelings of those coping mechanisms that are negative, that are destructive. And you are able to access God on a daily basis, not because you have to, but because you want to. I'm going to stop there, and we're going to look at some questions, because in the next session I'm going to really look at some of the practical ways in which we can build ourselves up and make ourselves stronger, more robust, more stable emotionally and mentally, so that we are better able to respond to the demands of leadership instead of constantly reacting all the time. So I'm going to stop here for a second. We're going to split into groups, and I'm going to set some questions for you to talk about, to really just examine and explore a little bit, and then we'll go a little bit deeper, a little bit further and more practical in the next session. Thanks very much.
Hi everyone, it's Arianna. Tack så mycket för det, Arianna. Så viktigt att få gå från det här som man pratar om, krav till längtan. Och nu har vi tid för att mötas i våra grupper. Kanske har du en grupp med din församling eller församlingsledning, olika ledarskapsgrupper. Och vi har ungefär en kvart på oss. I den här pdf-filen som ni har på hemsidan med processfrågorna så står det tid under varje fråga. De tiderna stämmer inte riktigt, utan välj någon av de frågorna som du och din grupp tycker är mest intressant och ta den frågan. Så möts vi tillbaka på streamen strax innan 12:30. Lycka till! Ja, då var vi tillbaka här igen. Hoppas att ni har haft bra processtid tillsammans. Jag tänker att jag behöver inte stå här särskilt länge, utan vi lämnar över igen till Arianna som ska ta oss vidare i sin undervisning. Ja.
Hi everyone, welcome to session 2. I hope you've enjoyed spending a little bit of time chatting amongst yourselves and just having some discussions, and I'll be available to answer some questions. Hey everyone, welcome back to the third session. I can't believe it's gone this quickly already. I hope you've really enjoyed the first. Hi everyone, welcome to session 2. I hope you've enjoyed spending a little bit of time chatting amongst yourselves and just having some discussions, and I'll be available to answer some questions in a little while. So session 2, we're going to look at a little bit more detail. In session 1 we really were looking at the fact that stress can often come about when we are responding to external pressures from our own resources. So understanding and coming to terms with that you don't have enough and you need everything that God can give you in order to be able to be the leader, a healthy, emotionally stable leader. You need to have a connection to God that isn't based on demand and need, but based on desire and intimacy with Him. The other aspect that we looked at in session 1 is that we need to be able to be real and open and honest and understand that when pressure comes, what comes out of us can be dysfunctional, and so therefore we need to be committed to working on ourselves, growing ourselves, being prepared to go on a journey of transformation and dealing with some root issues in our own lives, root issues of inadequacy, root issues of fear, root issues around rejection, people pleasing. So all the things that come out of us when we're under pressure are opportunities for us to enter into a journey of growth and transformation. And Keys to Freedom, if you haven't done it yet, is a great way to just spend some time, 20 minutes a day, with your pen, your Bible, and the Holy Spirit, allowing Him to help you deal with some of those underlying issues in your character, in just the way that you deal with pressure. That's going to really help you be more stable as a leader. So let's look at more detail about stress in and of itself. How can we bust stress? How can we respond to stress? Stress, like I said, comes around when there's pressure all around us and we don't feel like we have enough to respond to the pressure, and therefore we get stressed. So what do we do? How do we avoid the stress? Because I believe, because pressure isn't going to go away, we can't avoid the pressure. I believe that there is a way to live our lives where we do not get stressed even though we are under pressure. So I'm going to give you 5 key points, and they are going to spell the word stress, which makes sense in English, probably doesn't make sense in Swedish, but go with me. The first S is for setting boundaries. One of the ways that we protect ourselves, one of the ways that we stay healthy and emotionally stable, is by being really good at setting boundaries. I have a neighbor up the road who has a really amazing apple tree. And this apple tree has been growing for many years, and every September time, August, September, those apples are so lovely and sweet and juicy that people from all over our village come to see if they can take one of the apples. And I've watched as children have sat on each other's shoulders to try and get an apple from the branch. I've seen people come with stones and try and hit the apples down, and with bags and baskets to collect the apples that have fallen. And that's all okay because the branch of the apple tree kind of falls over onto the pavement. But there is next to the pavement a 10-foot wall that's been built that separates their garden from the path. And whilst people can come and take the apples from the path, the apples on the other side of the wall are for private use. Now, it interests me because if someone was to take a ladder and climb up the ladder and take an apple from this side of the tree, it would be stealing. It would be trespassing. It would be against the law, whereas this side of the tree is perfectly acceptable and allowed. And the only thing that separates it, it could be from the same branch, it's from the same tree. Why is this apple okay and this apple not? The only thing to distinguish that is the wall. That's what boundaries do. Boundaries separate out what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, what's available to the people that follow you and what's available to your close family and friends. What part of you, what of your resources, your time, your energy, your finances, your passion, your thinking, what of your resources are you going to make available to the masses, to all of the people who want something? And what of your resources are you going to protect and save for only the few? Jesus was very good at putting boundaries down. Jesus understood the importance of boundaring his time and his energy. And there's examples of Jesus getting on a boat and separating himself from the crowd and preaching from the boat, because he created a physical boundary between him and the crowd. Maybe they were crowding around him, maybe they were trying to touch him, maybe they were making it impossible for him to be able to reach the masses because they were crowding in. So he took the choice to separate himself a bit and create some space, and yet was still able to make people feel like they could connect to him, that they were in relationship with him, that they could be close to him and hear and receive from him. So boundaries really do matter. Stress comes when we don't put boundaries down and therefore feel like people are asking something from us that we're not prepared to give, or that we don't want to give, or we feel we don't have anything left to give. And part of the problem and stress comes around when we just haven't been diligent in putting boundaries down. Learning to say no, but learning to say no kindly. Learning to have such an ability in relationships that you're able to communicate what is appropriate from what people are asking from you as a leader and what you are just not prepared to give. And that's okay. You know, and a bit later on, we'll talk about the kind of culture that's created in teams when boundaries are respected and when boundaries are expected. And so boundaries is something that some people struggle with because they don't want to let people down, because they feel like it's their responsibility to be the answer to everybody else's needs. Some people struggle with boundaries because they like fixing everything. They like being the one with all the answers. They like people coming to them and coming with problems, and they problem solve all the time. So there's a need to be needed. There's a nice aspect that comes from being the rescuer and being the fixer. And so guarding ourselves with putting healthy boundaries down, we sometimes fight against them ourselves because there's something we get from being in a place where everybody needs us. So if you know you're going to struggle with putting boundaries down because it sets something off in you, like you don't like letting people down, or you feel like you have a responsibility to be there for everybody all the time, then that's something that you need to explore a little bit more. And I can recommend some extra resources for people to just dig into a little bit more about boundaries. So if you are one of those people and we talk about boundaries and you go, yeah, but don't I, as a Christian, shouldn't I say yes to everybody? Shouldn't I meet everybody's need? Should I not be the one that's involved in crisis all the time and fixing it? Well, then boundaries is definitely something that you need to look into a little bit more. Having good boundaries, clearly communicated boundaries will have a direct impact on you not getting as stressed as you are when your boundaries are fallen down and you don't have a wall in place to protect the resources that need to be protected. The second point is a T for stress. So T is take time out. Listen to this. You cannot give what you don't have. You must be a leader that invests in themselves. And you need to love yourself enough to care about the little things. Do you have a hobby? Is there anything you do that isn't related to the ministry, that isn't related to your role, that isn't related to the responsibilities that you carry? Is there anything you do in your life that you just enjoy, that's there for rest and relaxation? And if you don't, then that's probably why you're stressed. And if you don't, it may be because it might be a reflection of the fact that you are not valuing, you don't have boundaries. Because I have found it absolutely essential to create margin, to create space where I have space to be me, not me the leader, not me the mother, not me the wife, not me the friend, not me the daughter, but me, just me. What do I like? What do I enjoy? What's food for my soul? And if I am not deliberately creating space and time to take care of me physically, mentally, emotionally, then I will become stressed. I will become worn out. I will have no space in my emotional capacity, in my physical capacity, and in my mental capacity. And that will make me a less effective and less safe leader to people who are following me. If people are watching me as a leader and they see me staying late, arriving early, never taking a holiday, never taking a break, setting the pace, fast, do this, do it now, and living my life without margin, then I'm setting the example for all my teams to follow in the same way. And I'm creating a culture that is not healthy for others to follow. If I'm not, making sacrifices in my own leadership in terms of, actually, you know what, I can't do that time because I need to go and be at my kids' show, not having that boundary in. So again, taking time out, doing the things you enjoy, little and often. I used to have a pattern of dragging myself, like going so fast that I would think, well, it's okay, I'm going to have a holiday soon. I'm going to have a holiday soon. I'm going to have a holiday soon. And I would get to my holiday, 2 weeks holiday. I would spend 3 days sick because I'm physically exhausted, mentally exhausted. So I'd be sick the first 3 days. Then the middle sort of 7 or 8 days, I would actually begin to relax, actually begin to enjoy myself, actually begin to, create memories with my family. And then the last 3 or 4 days, I would start ramping back up again to try and get going, and I would lose that time and I'd start feeling the stress again and the strain again. And so my holiday of 2 weeks really was only a few days in the middle. And I've learned over the years to go little and often. If I can relax for 10 minutes in my day or 20 minutes in my day, that's actually better than just going until I have a holiday. So especially in this current season with lockdown, that's been a really important part, as well as boundaries, creating boundaries in the space that you're working in and creating, separation between work and family. And if you're in ministry, if you're leading a church, if that's your leadership area, then that's especially important, because it can feel like church is your life, church is your family. And that isn't actually true. It's still a job, it's still a role, it's still a responsibility that is separate from your own family, from your wife or your husband or your children. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. In fact, I'll talk a little bit more about it now, because it's actually the next R, stress. So the ST we've done, the R is actually relationships matter most. And I think the best way I know how to give you an example of what I mean by that, how do you keep yourself healthy? How do you make wise choices about protecting your emotional and mental well-being? It actually comes when you learn how to protect your relationships that are the most important to you. And that is not your relationship with your job or your church or your responsibility. For me, what happened in my life to make this a really important lesson was that I had given my everything, my resources, my energy, everything was being ploughed into pioneering Mercy UK. It was what I felt God had called me to do. This is my call on planet Earth. I am here to build something called Mercy UK and to reach as many people as I can, to equip them, to empower them. This is my mission. I was excited, engaged, passion was at work in me, and I was going for it. And all the while, this is many years ago now, my children were very young. I have a husband who is a CEO of a large organization himself, so we were both engaged in very high level leadership responsibilities. And it was causing damage to our relationship. He was not in ministry. He works in a secular organization, and our whole way of doing life had been impacted by my work ethic, by me not having good boundaries, by me not taking time out, by me not prioritizing relationships, and I was giving everything into Mercy. And we sat down, we had about 2 years worth of conversations. I'll call them conversations, discussions, heated discussions. And one particular night, I'll never forget, my husband sat down and we were at the kitchen table, the kids were in bed, we'd had another discussion, and it was all, he was like, we can't keep doing this. This is, we are paying for this with our marriage. We are paying for this with our relationship. And I did what I did every time we had this conversation, which was say, yeah, but this is God. I would throw the God card and say, this is God. How can you ask me to change when I know this is what it takes to build this? And he said, this is not what I signed up for. This is too difficult. This is causing too much pain in our marriage. And I was cross, and I went in the car and I drove and I prayed this prayer, and it's a real prayer. I really prayed, and I'm embarrassed to share it, but I'll share it anyway because it's important. I prayed to God and said, I feel like I'm Mary. I'm like a Mary. I am carrying something. I need to give birth to something that's going to save many people. And he's like Joseph. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand how important this is and how we all have to make sacrifices for this. You know, can you give him a dream, God, that shows him that he needs to get on board with this vision and just help make this happen? And God arrested me like he's never arrested me before. So much so that I had to emergency stop my car and pull over because the presence of God was so strong. And he said to me, listen, and I felt him lift my face and make me look at him. And I'm going to do the same to you. Listen. He said to me, I only have you to be a wife to that husband. I only have you to be a mother to those 2 boys I've given you. I can ask anyone to do what you're doing at Mercy. And what's more, if you don't get it right, I will take Mercy out of the equation and make it easy for you. And right then I felt the weight of having got my priorities wrong, of having valued my leadership responsibilities over my relationship responsibilities. And God said to me, you are riding a horse called passion. And passion is a great benefit to you. Passion will give you speed. Passion will help you jump over obstacles that other people will stop against. But because you're riding passion, you will jump over that. Passion will give you the ability to see further, and passion will help you rally troops around your cause because passion is attractive. He said, but very few people learn to ride passion, this horse called passion. Very few learn to ride him well. They don't put reins on. They resist the restriction of a saddle so that something can be carried safely. And if you don't learn to ride passion, you will step on flowers that you were supposed to protect, and you will ride past landscape that I've put there for you to enjoy, and you will end up in the place and at a time that you were never meant to end up at, because you've never learnt the importance of restricting and riding passion with wisdom. And that has saved my marriage. Understanding that I will stand before the throne of God one day, and it will not be the ministry that will cause him to say, well done, good and faithful servant. It will not be the thousands of nameless, faceless people that I feel like I may have had a part in playing for their breakthrough, and that I take great pleasure in seeing people healed and whole and knowing that I had a part to play in that. It won't be any of that God says well done for. It will be the one relationship, the one marriage that I have to take care of and to build and to grow and to be an example to my children who are watching the decisions and the choices we make. It will be those relationships, the ones that only I can do. What kind of daughter am I? What kind of best friend am I? What kind of mother am I? Those are questions we need to ask ourselves, knowing that our closest relationships do not suffer for the sake of our leadership responsibilities. It is possible. And after that conversation I had with I turned my car around, I went back and sat down opposite my husband, and I had to say, and be really honest, and had to say some really tough words, which were, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. And if we can't work this out between us, then I will walk away from Mercy. The hardest thing I've had to say. But I meant it. And we both needed to learn that we had to make changes to our relationship. We had to prioritize our marriage, and both of us needed to make some sacrifices and put boundaries down. We put some very clear, deliberate, practical boundaries down about how much time we spent together, how much time we spent watching TV, or how much time we spent actually just working in the office, but not really even speaking to each other. So we really had to be and shape and deliberately make choices about what we want our marriage to look like. And for any of you who are married listening to this, it's so important. Maybe you're not married, but you are a friend, you are a daughter or a son, you are someone's person to someone. And don't ever spend that to gain leadership responsibilities. So make sure that you put boundaries down in the relationship. Eat, sleep, exercise. That's the next E. Stress, we're spelling stress, S-T-R. The next is E. Eat, sleep, exercise. You have to be fit for purpose. If you're going to be emotionally and mentally stable and strong, then you need to be physically stable and strong too. We have a great call on our lives as leaders, and we need to be responsible in taking care of our physical body. There was a time in my life when God just spoke to me I was wanting strategy, I was wanting wisdom, I was wanting, message inspiration. And all he was giving me was this: eat more vegetables. Honestly, that's what God said to me. Eat more vegetables. Eat as if you have a purpose, and eat as if the purpose is a great one. So take care of the vessel. Exercise. I am told that when you exercise, there's something called endorphins that get released in your body to make you feel good. I haven't found those yet. I hate exercise, but I do it. Why? Because I want to be fit, I want to be strong, I want to be healthy. Go to your doctor's appointments. When you feel ill, when you have symptoms, don't ignore them. Don't just pray and don't follow through practically. Yes, pray, but also go and see a doctor. Also be wise in how you exercise and how you eat and how you live your physical life and take care of your physical body. The other S is set realistic goals. How do you be a emotionally stable and healthy leader? Well, you set yourself healthy boundaries, healthy goals. Don't be so driven by a need to succeed, so driven by a need to achieve, so need to be driven by a target that we have to reach. How many people are coming to our service? How many people are, engaged in our activities? The figures, the numbers, the ways we measure success, where we become driven by those so much so that we drive everybody else. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. We drive ourselves because we're goal orientated, and then we become perfectionist, then we become driven, and we over promise and then feel that we have to achieve those things. And I've learned to under promise and over deliver. To ask myself, when I feel stress, where is the pressure coming from? Is it coming from an unrealistic goal that I've set myself to produce something, to do something, and I'm putting a time pressure on it that doesn't need to be there? You know, what has God asked me to do? And I think that's sometimes, you know, when I look at Jesus, he achieved so much in just 3 years. I wonder about the 30 years where we don't hear from him. You know, was he driven by I'm not achieving, I'm not doing, I'm not succeeding, I haven't even started my ministry yet, I haven't even achieved anything yet? But actually all he was doing was preparing, was enjoying the journey, was growing in favor with men and with God. And I think sometimes we undervalue the journey and the process so much because we're so goal orientated that we put pressure on ourselves, therefore causing stress, which causes unhealthy habits and an unstable way of doing our lives. So set realistic goals. And then the last one is seek support. End the pretend. I've already spoken about that really quite a lot in the first session, but have people around you who are real. People who are not afraid of you, people who are not intimidated by you, and people who look you in the eye and go, stop it, sort this out, stop doing this, or stop behaving like that, or stop using this as a coping mechanism. People who will be honest and open with you and will not be afraid to challenge you. Have friends who you have fun with, that don't need you, that don't need you to fix them, that don't need you to be, you know, have friends who you are not the boss of. Peers. You know, people who aren't just saying yes because you're their leader and they just want to please you. You know, be really deliberate in creating friendships around you that are authentic, that you've given permission for people to speak into your life, because we need each other. We need people around us who will mirror and who will put a mirror up and go, do you know you do this? Do you know that when you are stressed, you speak like this to people? Do you know that you haven't taken any time off for 6 months? Do you know that? So having built and allowing ourselves to have those people around us is really, really important. So the 5 ways of busting stress out of our lives is 1, setting boundaries. 2, taking time out and being really deliberate about rest and relaxation. 3, valuing the relationships that matter the most. Eat, sleep and exercise. Set realistic goals and seek support. Have genuine friendships. Say I need help when you need help. And that is what we're going to be discussing a little bit more in our breakout groups right now.
Så bra. Tack så mycket, Arianna. Nu så har vi processtid och fika. Och frågorna hittar ni på New Wines hemsida i pdf-en. Det finns ett test där som man kan göra om hur mycket man faktiskt är en sån här sund ledare som Arianna pratar om. Och jag skulle verkligen vilja uppmuntra var och en av er att ta det som hon säger på allvar. Det är så lätt att höra de här grejerna och sen bara tänka, ja, men jag löser det någon gång i framtiden. Som Paul sa innan här, du kan göra någonting nu. Och det finns en tid för att göra någonting nu. Så vi har processtid nu och fika. Ni får lägga upp er tid som ni vill. Och så ses vi igen här 3:30, alltså 15:30. Vi ses!